Welcome to Below the Mic. Today is Saturday, October the 25th of 2025. If you've been following my story, welcome back. If you have not, then it's a lot. Um, I've been searching for my half sister, Nancy Marie Williams, who was born July the 11th of 1977 in Houston, Texas, and was living in Horseshoe Lake Estates in Romare, Texas at the time of my father's death. My father's name was James Thomas Williams, and he was 32 years old at the time of his death. And according to the only factual records I currently have right now, it is of Dolores Antoinette Williams. Uh, they were common law married, so her maiden name is Mejias. I have found out that on my half sister's birth record, Dolores's last name is incorrectly spelled. So, Nancy, if you're out there and you are looking for your birth mother by the name of Dolores Antoinette Williams or Dolores Antoinette Mejias, on your birth record, it is spelled Meijas, but in reality, her last name is spelled MejIas. So if you're having any problems finding that, it may be because the spelling is different. I can tell you guys that I have been searching for a very long time. And I have been taking breaks in between because as I am finding out, I just run into one dead end after another. And sometimes it just seems like it's a merry-go-round and I go in circles over and over. I did get to meet up with a few folks since our last conversation on here. So some of you know, and if you don't know, I just encourage you to go back and listen to my other podcast. And that way you can follow the story a little bit more and kind of bouncing back and forth a little. And that's okay. I just don't want to confuse anyone because you know what? I'm confused already. And I feel like I'm searching sometimes for a ghost, but I am determined to find the answers. They are out there somewhere and somebody knows something. And I'm hoping that someone somewhere will hear a little bit of the story and say, you know what? I know something. Let me just reach out and let them know. So my name is Christine. I am the host of Below the Mic podcast, and I will be posting this on several different uh, social media platforms. I am not great at this. I am just here to tell the story and to help tell other stories. If you want help tell me your story, I would be happy to do so. And I do like to go off of facts when people tell me things. I do a lot of research and I do my best to find the answers that are factual, but I can't dismiss things that are told to me either. And so I was given some information. I was connected with one of Nancy's cousins, and just kind of ironically, there is that Nancy's cousin Veronica shares some similar stories with her dad and my dad. And my sister, Nancy Marie Williams, like I said, was born on July the 11th of 1977. Veronica was born July the 17th of 1977. And her mother is Nancy's mother's sister. So her mother's name was Lucy Mejias, and she's no longer living. So we can't verify any of the information, but some similarities are that Veronica's father was also shot um, in the chest. So kind of had a little bit of help from Andrea that was able to find some newspaper clippings potentially linking Veronica's dad and telling a story about what led to his shooting. Now, I couldn't help but get at the time, the first time I spoke to Veronica, just this really feeling that, oh my gosh, is she Nancy? Is there somehow, some way, did Lucy adopt her, change her name, but kept her middle name? May have had a incorrect birthday. Did the 11 get changed to a 17, or did the 17 get changed to an 11? You know, back then it's all written down and it has to be transcribed into something. So humans make errors. So is it possible that Veronica is Nancy? I don't know. Veronica doesn't know. Veronica wasn't raised by her mother. She was raised by her grandmother until she was about 10 years old or so, I believe is what she told me. So I did a thing. I went last weekend on Saturday morning, decided to get in my car and drive the 3 hours to where Veronica lives and met up with her. And April didn't know I was coming, and I met with April though, and met with April's other sister, Marcia, who has a different father than April. They share the same mother. And so I met with them, and I met with a couple of Marcia's children who are like 19 and 20 or 21 years old. So they shared a lot of stories with me. It was a lot to take in, a lot to process. So I did take some time from the podcast a little bit to process. And I think I'm still processing some of the things that I've learned and some stories that I've heard. And I took the affidavit that I received regarding the night of the shooting of my father, um, and I'll let Marcia read it. And I know it's got to be hard the first time you read that. It was hard for me the first time I read it. So, you know, the affidavit has a statement from her mother. Um, and it has a statement from a Rosemary Ramona Orsack that I've still not been able to locate. Still having some difficulty there. I know that she lived in Horseshoe Lake Estates in August of 1977 because she was one of the people who drove my father to Leggett Memorial Hospital, where he later died. So I know that she was around that area. I have reached out to Horseshoe Lake Estates and just asking questions to some people who may still be around, who might know some information. Um, because you never know if you really know something or not. Um, I'm just following every story that I can and trying to validate what's been told. Um, so I did spend some time with, like I said, with April and Veronica and Marcia and Marcia's children. And some of the consensus is the story still that they were told in a lot of different times was that Nancy was sold on the black market when she was a baby. Still don't know that to be true or untrue. I don't have any proof of that either way. Um, the last memory that April seems to have of Nancy is that Nancy was still in diapers and she was there and then she was gone. They were either at April's grandmother Pauline's, or what April seems to remember was more likely at her Aunt Opal's, which would not have been blood related to Nancy, but was blood related to April's father. So I have reached out to many. I've reached out to Opal. I've a couple, two or three different times. I've not received any response from her. I have reached out to multiple family members to Opal in April, and to this date, I've only had two reach out to me just to let me know that they don't have any information. One said that she would pass my information along, um, but nobody really is saying anything. I can't help but think that there's a possibility that, you know, to me is like one of three things. Either Nancy was adopted, because I do know that on the night of the shooting that Nancy, April, and April's older sister, I believe, Celia, were taken into custody from the Department of Children's Services by a worker by the name of Julie White. I don't know what Julie's white age would be at this time. I do hope to maybe be able to try to reach out to her and see if she remembers anything or can tell me um, if Nancy stayed in the system or didn't. But it sounds like she was picked back up along with April and went back to her grandmother um, after Dolores was bailed out. Dolores was bailed out by her brother who came from Georgia to bail her out. I believe his name is Richard. Uh, and and Richard has since passed a few years back as well. So, the people of getting just some real hard factual evidence from and leads from are turning out to be mainly no longer with us. So it's just really hard to get exact stories. It sounds like there was a lot of drug use, abuse, a lot of prison time in and out, which is all public information. Anybody can, find that information where Lucy and Dolores have spent some time in the state correctional system here in Texas. And and then it sounds like a lot of things that they inflicted pain upon one another and just kind of kept going on with life. Uh, with stabbing and things of that nature. And again, still trying to process all that and just not understanding how, you can do that to, your sibling. But if we look back and we think about August, or even let's just say July of 1977, you have two sisters pregnant at the same time who give birth 6 days apart. Both have daughters. Both give their daughters the middle name of Marie. But when I ask the question is, does anybody remember Dolores and Lucy being pregnant at the same time and having babies 6 days apart? Nobody has recollection of that. But at the time, I'm asking people who were, one of them was just born, at that time, but also someone else who was very young at the time and, less than 2 years old. So they're not going to have a lot of memory of that. But as they were growing up, I asked the question of, well, did your mom or your aunt ever mention, because sometimes it's kind of like a competition thing. I know that two of my girls had babies close together. They were 3 months apart, but they talked about that. It was something that they talked about that we mentioned throughout the years. So I found it just really kind of hard to process of why didn't they talk about that? Why was that never mentioned? Now, I go back a few times about the affidavit that I received from the Liberty County Sheriff's Department, and I witnessed Marsha reading the affidavit and could kind of feel the emotions and things that she's was likely experiencing because I've been there. I remember reading it for the first time, but I was reading it from a point of view of the daughter to the man who was shot. she was reading it from a perspective of her mother and giving the statement, and possibly at that time, as reported, was being abused by my father. So, she, and I'm sure, and I could understand if I was reading it from that perspective too, saying, she was protecting herself and self-defense. I can't say either way. I wasn't there. I don't know what I would have done. Would I have acted in that way? I don't know. Was it justified? I don't know. I can't tell you. I think that it's just bad all the way around. I don't support the violence. I don't support the outcome, but I also don't support all of the lies and the different stories that were told about the night. Because some questions that I would have when I read it is, why didn't she call 911? Why didn't she go next door to seek help when she knew that she couldn't get my dad into the vehicle? Why did she go back to Ramona Rosemary Orsak's house to get help? I mean, she had three little kids, y'all. It's not easy to take a newborn baby, one less than two, and the other probably around 4 years old, walk them because you can't get the vehicle started or such to somebody else's house to get them, come back, load everybody in a different vehicle, and then go to the hospital. That seems like an awful lot of time that he could have been receiving care from somebody, whether it be a neighbor or an ambulance en route. Why was it not a hurry? Was she afraid she was going to get in trouble? Well, if it's self-defense, you know, why are you wasting the time? But did anybody ever think about that? Did they ask those questions? Um, to me, it doesn't appear so, because it doesn't have any of that in the affidavit of where they asked her why she didn't call 911, or why she didn't go to a next door neighbor, somebody who was closer, for help. So I don't know. Was the expected outcome the end of his life, and that's what the goal was? Or was it just she doesn't know what to do and she just, you know, did what she did anyway? I don't know. Um, so I can see where Marsha, can feel some kind of way and feel like her mom was protecting herself. So I can't fault Marsha for feeling that way either. And like I said, it's a lot to process. And Marsha was quite a bit, she wasn't born until after 80. So she wasn't born yet when all of this occurred. And it sounds like, according to Marsha, she was also in and out of the CPS custody too. April was too. So I, I have no reason to believe that possibly Nancy ended up back in state's custody, and that could have been adopted out at a later time, or even early on. I mean, she was an infant. I have to wonder, because there's a lot of talk about drugs in the stories of, growing up and such, and Dolores and Lucy being pretty heavy into drugs, and that not being a secret. So I'm trying to be respectful too of, their living, because I have a connection with them and I want to respect them as well. But I'm only going to repeat what was told to me, and I have no proof of either or. But from what it sounds like, from records, is that it was quite quite a history between the two sisters, and they followed each other everywhere. And also, their other sisters. I believe there was a sister named Barbara and a sister named Virginia, and a couple of brothers. And but particularly Lucy and Dolores followed each other around quite often. but also had a very volatile relationship between the two of them too. So, so I don't know. I don't know. Was Lucy there that night? Was Lucy involved in any way? And is Lucy really Rosemary? I honestly just don't have an answer for that, because like I said, I'm not having much luck at all finding the named person in the affidavit named Rosemary Ramona Zach. I am going to keep looking. I will continue my search. Uh, so then there was another just plot twist with a whole new story today. And I'm still processing the information and the likelihood of it having some truth to it or not. Again, I'm looking for facts and I'm still searching. So, but I was told this morning that by a relative of mine, actually, that there was somebody else who was arrested for my father's death and did 25 years in the penitentiary, and who lived in Horseshoe Lake Estates at the time, and who was possibly having an affair with Dolores. And I can't rule that out as far as the affair goes because of what I've been told by Dolores's children and niece, is that Dolores was very promiscuous. She did have a lot of men in and out of her life. So I can't say for a fact that that is not true. Now, what it does bring me to is that if in fact Dolores was having an affair with this man in Romare, is he in fact the biological father to Nancy? Now that's something I have to consider, considering I've not had very good luck tracking, finding Nancy. So I can't rule it out, but I can't confirm it either. I can't confirm yet that this other person did, in fact, um, say that he was the actual shooter and that he actually was the one who did the time for the crime. Because I know that Dolores didn't do time for it. So I'm still looking into that. And I also have somebody else looking into it that has a police background and who used to be a private investigator. And so he kind of, has a little more ideas of maybe where we can go, where I can find some more information, and working together on that. My cousin Sean is also a retired deputy sheriff, and I've recently connected with him just over the last 2 or 3 weeks, y'all. So a lot is happening right now. I'm getting a lot of information. Um, and so I'm just trying to weed it out, trying to have others help me sort through it and find some factual information and then going with that. I also uh, reached out to a Facebook page regarding like adoptees, and someone sent me a link yesterday that I am going to pursue, and I'm going to enter my information into the system. Of course, I have to pay them for this. So, and to do a lot of the searches, I have to pay. So sometimes it's a little slower than others, at times, um, and of course I pay to be able to do this podcast. I know, but I want to get the word out. But sometimes it goes a little slower than other times. So if you're wondering why sometimes it takes a little bit longer to share some information, it's because, there's a financial aspect to any information that I am trying to obtain to prove facts. And sometimes it's a slow process. and not everything is available to track back to 1977. So you got that problem there too. But I'm going to continue to move forward. I'm going to provide information to this site, and the only way that that kind of works is if Nancy was adopted and she is searching for her birth parents or siblings, and I enter my information to say that I am a sibling searching for a biological sibling, and we match, that is the only way that they will reach out and say that there is a match. Now, if I enter my information and go through their process, I think there's an hour counseling session as well, for the just in case, what if you match and then the other person really doesn't want to know, or what do you how are you going to process the information, things like that. I'm not sure what their questions are yet, but I can only imagine, since it's a counseling session, to kind of prepare you for that. Now, I may give them my information, and it may not go absolutely anywhere because, number one, Nancy may not be my biological half sister if, in fact, her mother was having an affair on my father, or if Nancy was adopted and she really doesn't want to know and want to find me or anybody else related to her. But the thing is that if she does enter her information, then she's searching. But if she doesn't want to know and she's not searching, the information is not going to be there. But my information will still be there for whenever she's ready, if she in fact did get adopted. Now, there was one record, it was a marriage record actually, in I believe around 2002, where there was a M. Nancy Murray Williams that married a Jackie Goudry, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but his name was Jackey, and then last name is Guidry, I believe. Now, I did come across that record several years ago, and I just ran into a dead end with it. And then I ran into it again, ran into another dead end. But then I started searching a lot of Nancy Goudry on Facebook. There's a few that have come up. I've messaged quite a few. Only one has even responded to me. And, okay, I get it. But at the same time, I don't, because I just say, hey, if you don't know, if you don't want to know, just say that. Respect it. I'll respect it. No problem. But just to not respond at all is sometimes, just as bad as, just not knowing, honestly. Um, but that's just me. And I know not everybody is that way. Um, so I have to respect that as well. But I did find one that is very similar, I think. But I have to kind of try to imagine April and I. We took a picture together when I met them last weekend in Humble, Texas. And so now I have to think, okay, what would April look like? Or I'm sorry, not April, but what would Nancy look like? Would she has to be a combination of April and myself, if in fact, I know for sure she is April's half sister because they have the same mother. Now I'm not for certain. At this point, I have been all these years certain that she's my half sister, but now I just am not sure. But so is she going to be a combination of April and myself or not? But when you start looking at people and you start looking at names and family names that are both on April's, family of where we were thinking that Nancy initially disappeared from, April's Aunt Opal's. And so when I look at her Aunt Opal's family names and such, and I see this Nancy Goudry, I can see that she's connected to a lot of April's father's family. But at the same time, she's saying it's not her. So that's real confusing to me. Um, and I still feel like it's a possibility. I'm not completely ruling that out just yet. I do think it's still possible that it's her. She may not know, she may not want to know, and she just may not want anything to do with us. And that's okay too. If that is her wishes, I will respect that. You know, um, I was asked just the other day, what is my goal here? And I never really thought about it as a question asked to me like that because I've never thought of it as a goal. I've always just thought of it as a connection, that I feel connected to Nancy. So I really had to think about what is my goal? What do I expect to reach when I find the answer? You know, is Nancy alive? Did she pass away as a child and it's a secret, is hidden? Did she stay in the system and was she adopted? Did she stay in the system and did she just age out? Was she addicted to any drugs when she was born, which is also a possibility? Is she have the mental capability um, to search for her biological family or not? There's so many things that can of reasons that we may just be, running into brick walls. Every time I turn around, I feel like there's a brick wall. And sometimes I just feel like I'm chasing a ghost. But I'm not ready to give up yet. So I would say that my goal in this is to see, is she well? Is she alive? And, just curious, has she had a good life? Um, and if she hasn't, and if she doesn't want anything to do with us, then I will respect that as well. And even if she hears this or if she sees a post that I've sent to a family member that she's connected to, or if she just really didn't know all of this, I can see that that's probably a whole lot, because it's a whole lot for me. You have to decide what you want introduced into your life and such. And there's probably a good reason why when I was in my 20s and um, that I didn't have all the information that I have right now because I probably would have given up. I probably would not have continued to pursue um, this path, this journey. But I do feel a deep connection with Nancy. I feel like um, I need to tell her story if it's a story that needs to be told. If it's not a story that needs to be told and she just doesn't want to be found, then then it would be nice to know that and then just move on. But so the end of the day, I just want her to know that she has always been a part of my journey through life, and I may not have been able to every day of my life actively been searching for her, but she's always been there along my journey, and every chance I get, I do searches. I do log back into Ancestry. I pay that fee and I hope that maybe she's gone and done a DNA and we can get connected, or her children have done DNA if she has children and we can get connected. So I do hope, that there are times and then, um, before, you know, before the end of my life, because I'm not getting any younger either. And I'm only 7 years older than her, but I don't really know how to really answer that question, but just to say that, you know, I just feel a connection and um and I just still feel like I have a lot of unanswered questions and that there is a story that needs to be told. And which brings me to if there's anybody who has a story that they want told or need to be told, and maybe you don't have all the answers either, but you have little bits and you're trying to locate someone that you just don't know, what happened to them, and you'd like to get the word out, I'll be happy to help you do that. Um, I can't dedicate a lot of time in your searches or your research, but I can tell your story as you give it to me. And, if it's something that you even want to keep private, or somebody knows anything about my story and you want to reach out, but you want to stay anonymous, then let's make it happen. You can reach me. Um, you can email me at belowthemic@yahoo.com. It's BELOWTHEMIC@yahoo.com. If you want to help fund, this search too, I also have the Buy Me a Coffee link, and shoot me an email and say, hey, what is your link? Or go to one of my podcasts, and you'll see the link on there. I have a Facebook page of Below the Mic. I do post the podcasts on there as well. I try to put it on every social media platform that I can. I am still learning about all of them. And so learning all of the gadgets and things is still sometimes a little bit of a challenge for me, but I'm trying to get it out there. I'm trying to tell the story, and I'm trying to find some answers. And I'm hoping that someone out there somewhere, which I strongly believe, has a clue. And you may not know it's a clue yet, but part of the story. The stories that you've been told. That there are connections, and one person, that it only takes one person to link it back to say, hey, I know what happened to your sister. And there might be people out there who know, because it may not have been a good outcome of what have happened to her. And you might be afraid of consequences. And I get that, and I understand that, but I do hope that um, that you're able to reach out and just give me what information that you have. That way, you know, not knowing is one of the hardest things to get through when you don't have all of the answers, but you know that there's someone out there who does. So that's what I'm hoping for. So my goal, I guess, for right now, and is subject to change, is that my goal is to find somebody who knows something about Nancy Marie Williams, born July 11th, 1977, to James Thomas Williams, age 32, at the time of his death in August 18th of 1977, and to Dolores Antoinette Mejias, who went by Williams for many years, and who gave her other children, some of her other children, the Williams name, although my father was not their biological father. So please, if you have any information, reach out to me, send me an email, belowthemic@yahoo.com, or send me a private message on my Below the Mic Facebook page. And I will appreciate any and all leads that you can provide for me. Thank you for listening again at on this Saturday evening in Central Texas, October the 25th of 2025. And I hope that next time I am able to share a little more news, and that gets us a little bit closer to the search. Y'all have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk soon.